Good morning, everyone. My name is Ankit. You're watching Daily Newspaper Analysis by StudyIQ IAS English channel. Now, daily we pick up in these kind of videos three important news sources, that is The Hindu, Indian Express as well as PIB, and today is no different. Now, ever realize the fact why UPSC or other such exams are called competitive exams? The reason for that is because your performance in the exam or your rank in the exam does not just depends on your performance, but it also depends on performance of other aspirants like you. So this is why it is called a competition. Now, especially during the time when the year is getting end, especially in the colder months of December and early January, we have seen students just lazying around their time and wasting their time doing nothing. And this creates a window of opportunity for serious aspirants, for dedicated aspirants, because these serious and dedicated aspirants, they know the importance of their time. They utilize this very time to read newer stuff, to write and practice their answers, to practice MCQs, and this puts them into a right track to clear the prelims, mains, and finally the interview, getting selected into the civil services. So this is the difference between serious and not so serious aspirants. So students, the ones who are watching this, I will request you not to waste your time. Just keep on reading and follow your timetable on a daily basis, and you will be ahead from most of the other aspirants. Understood? So, good morning, Shri Kalpana. Now, let us start our today's discussion. I have in our today's discussion 7 important articles, but today we will start with an unfortunate event. And why am I saying unfortunate event? Because former Prime Minister of India, Dr. Manmohan Singh, passed away. Now, the notes for this session will be available on, as usual, the Telegram channel that I have given, ATS Live. I will upload the notes as soon as this session ends. Understood? Now, coming back to the first article of the day, as I told you, 15th Prime Minister of India, Dr. Manmohan Singh, passed away last night in Delhi because of age-related illness. Now, Manmohan Singh was Prime Minister for as much as 10 years, and before that, he has held important posts in the government of India, be it Finance Minister, be it RBI Governor, be it member of the Planning Commission. Now, among all his achievements, probably the most important one is that he is credited with bringing the 1991 economic reforms. And at that time, Dr. Manmohan Singh was not the Prime Minister, but rather he was the Finance Minister under the PV Narasimha Rao government. Now, India faced economic crisis, and it led to various policies by the government which resulted into economic reforms, and the result of these reforms we can witness now, as India is the largest big economy growing in the world. So this has been the implication of the moves that were made back in 1991 by Dr. Manmohan Singh. So this will be our subject of today's discussion. Now, this article is important from GS paper 3 perspective because reforms such as liberalization, privatization and globalization, which are abbreviated as LPG, are mentioned there in your GS3 syllabus. So we'll be discussing the important aspects of these reforms and how these reforms have impacted Indian economy. Now, before understanding why these reforms were brought into place, first let us understand more about economic crisis which happened in the year 1991. Now, this economic crisis just not fell into the lap of India all of a sudden. Rather, it was a result of many policies that the government has brought right from the time it got independent. And the shortcomings of these policies over a period of decades culminated into economic crisis, which was prominent in the year 1991. Now, in 1991, India witnessed high inflation. Inflation was as much as 13%. Which you understand is quite a large figure. Also, because of this inflation, what we saw that industrial output was declining, and so was our economic growth, which had become stagnant. Now, this was primarily due to domestic factors, but also important international events which happened back then. The most important was the Gulf War, which was fraught between Iraq on one hand and the United States on the other, and because of this Gulf War, we saw the prices of crude oil, it skyrocketed. Now you understand, to meet the demands for crude oil, India is dependent primarily on imports. So whenever the prices of crude oil increases anywhere in the world, it has inflationary impact on the Indian economy. And Indian economy at that time was already weak. So because of that, an already weak Indian economy faced the brunt of high inflation, which pushed Indian economy into crisis. Now, to deal with such crisis, what the government usually does is that it borrows money from the market. But already I told you, India's economy was already weak. So that means the government has taken loan even before that crisis had happened. And after it took fresher loans, it resulted into rising fiscal deficit, as much as 9% of India's GDP. Now, this borrowing which the government made from both domestic and external sources led not just to increase in fiscal deficit but also increase in external debt. Now external debt puts any country into a vulnerable position because you cannot borrow external debt in your own currency. Rather, you have to borrow it using the foreign currency, and to that you need to exchange your currency with that of foreign currency. So naturally, any value of your currency, if it devalues or it deteriorates, it further increases the risk of currency crisis. So this is what happened back in 1991 also, that government had too much debt, its currency was becoming less valuable, and hence the cost of borrowing increased, which further pushed India into a severe economic crisis. Now this was the balance sheet of the government. Now what about balance of payments? Now to import any good into a country, you understand you need to pay for that good in foreign currency. And to cushion the blow on Indian forex reserves market, what the RBI does is that it maintains foreign exchange reserves. But back in 1991, India's position was so weak that India's foreign exchange reserve was only enough for us to import 2 weeks worth of imports. So now India's foreign exchange reserves covers how much? Approx 11 months of imports, and it fell down to 2 weeks back in it fell down to 2 weeks back in 1991. So this was the problem that India faced. So facing this problem, India approached the International Monetary Fund so that International Monetary Fund could borrow funds to India under the provision of emergency financial assistance. So India sought help from IMF. But IMF was of the opinion that India's problem was a result of its policy since independence, which was socialist pattern of society, which was license permit Raj, which was closed trade from foreign trade. So this was all, in eyes of IMF, a structural problem with respect to Indian economy. So it said to the government that until and unless you decide to reform your economy, we will not provide you any loans. And this is what happened, that government realized the importance of undertaking important reforms, and hence it sought emergency financial assistance from IMF. So this was the context of the year 1991. Understood? And this is when the government brought many policies which are abbreviated as LPG reforms, and it enabled India to become a large economy that it is today. So let us understand what are the important policies or decisions that were taken by government under the LPG reforms. Now the first, that is L from the LPG, stands for liberalization, which means reducing the amount of control that the state has over the economy and introducing more private sector participation in the economy. That means people like you and I can participate, and the prices in the economy are not fixed by the government, rather it is market driven. Understood? So reducing the control of government on the economy is first step that the government did, was that it licensing wrong for most sectors in the economy, which is an example of private enterprises, that is in manufacturing. Rather than manufacturing everything, government from 1991 onwards started to focus only on important things, and the other non-important things were left for the private sectors, and it was encouraged to the private sector that please take up these kind of production activities in the country. Now the second was financial reforms, which means first of all India's currencies earlier was fixed and determined by the government and RBI in togetherness. However, this created many problems in terms of determining the adequate exchange rate, which promotes India's exports in abroad markets. However, as I told you, this created many disincentives for the company because India's fixed exchange rate system made India's exchange rate more and more expensive. So as to reduce this negative impact on foreign exchange, what the government did is that it conducted two methods of devaluation. That is, it subsequently devalued its currency by 9% and 10%, which reduced the value of rupee and hence promoting our exports in the foreign markets. Also, in case anybody wants to exchange the Indian rupee for any foreign currency, the government also simplified the foreign exchange regulation market, thereby promoting people to exchange their currencies in a free manner. Understood? Now also the government's ability to attain and have more revenue was impacted because of that, what government had the tendency that it used to impose a high amount of taxes. Now, high amount of taxes also in a way enables government to earn more from taxation revenue. However, it discourages people and companies to do more and more work and set up new factories. So, in order to promote investment in the economy, the government reduced the number of direct taxes and indirect taxes, and they also reduced the amount of taxation rate. Now this was financial sector reforms. Now let us understand what were the reforms related to trade sector. Now in this, India was in a way a kind of a closed economy, that India wanted to manufacture everything in India, and because of that it used to import or it used to impose higher tariffs on goods which are imported from abroad. So these import tariffs were a sense of disincentives for the people of India to not import anything from abroad. However, it was also a factor of discouragement for industries who used to have these raw materials brought from other parts of the country or other countries from abroad. And because of that, as there were high import tariffs levied on the raw material, it led to increase in final prices of the goods that they manufactured in India. So as to promote domestic manufacturing, the government also lowered the import tariffs and it removed quantitative restrictions on imports and exports, which favored increased trade from India and to India. Understood? So this was what liberalization was all about. Now let us move to the second P of LPG reforms, that stands for privatization. Now I told you, right, earlier most of the companies and most of the sectors in Indian economy was under the hands of government, which means there were government companies who were manufacturing bread, there were government companies who were manufacturing gold ornaments, there were government companies who were manufacturing watches. So do you think government needs to manufacture bread or it does need to manufacture watch? No, right? So this better sense of idea of how to manage an economy, it prevailed under the government back in 1991, and as a result, government started to sell off its holdings in the public sector company and it started to encourage private companies to invest in the economy. And this is what privatization is all about. That is, it focused on reducing the role, participation and control of the government in the economy, and rather it promoted participation of what? private sector in the economy. Now, there were many aspects of this. First of all, the government, it had ownership of many companies, so it needed to sell those ownership, and this was called the process of disinvestment. That is, disinvestment is the process where government, who has a majority or most of the ownership in a company, it decides to sell its shares to the private players, thereby transferring the control of that company from public sector to private sector, and this is disinvestment is all about. Also, there was policy shifts. Earlier, there were many sectors in which participation of private players were banned. So as to encourage private sector participation, these sectors were now open to private sector, thereby indicating a policy shift. Such was sectors such as insurance, banking, etc. And also government decided to exit from non-strategic sectors, that is, sectors which does not have that geostrategic or geoeconomic implications on India. In that sectors, government will have no presence at all. Also, government decided to form joint ventures so that it will transfer its knowledge to private companies, and private companies on the other hand will bring efficiencies, higher performance to the already existing public companies. So these were the set of policies that were brought under the aegis of privatization. Now you have to understand this: liberalization, privatization, globalization, these are not three different things. Rather, these are just one things having implications on one another. So you cannot see LPG in silo, rather you have to see them in togetherness. Understood? Hello? Am I audible now, Shri Kalpana? Hello? Hello? So I'll carry on. Now let us move to the third aspect of LPG, that is globalization. Now globalization, it in a way means that the participation of Indian companies in world market should be increasing, and so does participation of global companies in Indian market. Now good morning Kandam Sauji, good morning. Now, I'm glad, Kalpana, that the audio issue has been solved. So let us move to our discussion. Now, globalization, it aimed, as I've already told you, in integrating Indian markets with global markets and integrating global markets with Indian markets. And so that you need foreign companies to invest in India. For that, you need Indian companies to invest in other countries. So that in that logic, the government, it allowed foreign direct investment in India, and in some sectors it permitted as many as 100% of foreign investment, which means 100% of ownership in a particular sector which has been opened for 100% FDI can theoretically be owned by a foreign company. Also, it reduced the restrictions on foreign trade. Now you realize the countries or many foreign companies which are establishing their sectors or units in India, they need to import some kind of raw material. They need to import machineries into India, and so that they need to reduce restrictions on foreign import and export. Also, the big companies who are setting up their factories in India, they theoretically can send their goods to other countries. So this requires ease in foreign trade norms, and this is what Government of India did. Also, it encouraged Indian businesses to compete internationally, which means Indian government created a set of incentives, policies that benefited Indian companies, and this resulted into reduction of their export prices and thereby making their exports more competitive. More competitive in external markets. So that is why you understand exports from India increased, and also it led to increased imports into India. So all of this was a resultant or result of policies such as globalization. Understood? So these were the set of policies that were enacted especially after 1991 economic crisis, and it has resulted into massive growth of India, because earlier it was said India's growth was at around 3 to 3.5%, which was pejoratively termed as Hindu growth rate. However, after 1991 reforms, we saw Indian economy grew at a double the rate of earlier growth. That is, Indian economy averaged growth was 6.5%. And because of that, India currently is the world's fifth largest economy and on track to become world's third largest economy in a decade or so. And also, because of this growth, we saw development of India's IT sector, development of India's manufacturing sector, especially that India started manufacturing global products like iPhones. Indian IT companies has set up their offices in almost all the continents across the world. So this is what the result of economic reforms is all about. That people have gotten jobs, our economy has increased, so has our infrastructural capabilities, and all of this thanks to Dr. Manmohan Singh. So, based on this discussion, let us now solve the first practice question. This is a mains practice question. I will want all of you to attempt this question as it will ease out the process that the students face initially, the hurdles in answer writing, because this kind of hurdle can be inhibitive for your preparation. However, if you start practicing such questions on a daily basis, let me assure you that your selection will be guaranteed. Understood? Now I've picked up this article from Indian Express newspaper, particularly on page 16th, and it states that Manmohan Singh's government's lasting legacy was passage of Right to Information Act, which was passed in the year 2005. Now this act otherwise was also in news this year because India is currently witnessing 20th year of its implementation. Now this was brought by the UPA government, the Prime Minister of which was Dr. Manmohan Singh. Understood? So this is why we will be discussing the Right to Information Act. Now, what is Right to Information Act? After all, this is an act which gives citizens the right to seek information from public authorities. Now, what are public authorities? Now, public authorities are any company who are related to the government, be it PSU, be it government departments, and also from our discussions and Supreme Court judgments, we have inferred that NGOs who receive substantial funding from the government are also covered under the definition of public authority. Understood? So the definition of public authority has been interpreted quite widely by the Supreme Court, and it is just not those agencies where the government has control, but also those bodies which is funded by the government. Understood? Now people, if they want any information out of these bodies, they have a right to seek information after they file an application to a respected public information officer. Understood? Now, this act also provides for an institutional framework that what if the public information officer of that particular department or company refuses to give you the required information. So in that case, you can approach State Central Commission or State Information Commission, which are responsible for overall monitoring of this scheme. Also, the public information officers, that are persons who you will seek information from, will be established in all related government departments or in all companies which are substantially funded by the government. Now, the definition of public authorities, as I was saying before, was extended by Supreme Court as it interpreted the meaning of public authorities quite widely. And now, even the political parties are included in the ambit of RTI, as the Supreme Court said that political parties, they receive many benefits from the government, and hence you cannot leave them out of the purview of right to information. Now let us understand what are the obligations on public information officer or on the public authority under the provisions of this RTI Act. Now, in case if you file an application under RTI Act, it is mandatory on the public authority to provide you with the requisite information under a period of how many days? Within 30 days. Now, if the matter relates to detention or matter relates to life and death, here the information has to be provided not within 30 days, but within 48 hours, that is 2 days time at maximum. Also, or this provision of the act requires the government agencies to proactively disclose many informations so that to reduce the amount of RTI filed, because when government discloses many information proactively, it reduces the burden on people, it reduces the burden on government department, and hence under section 4 many information should be published quite widely by the government departments on their websites, in newspapers, etc. Also, in case these public authorities do not comply with the decisions, that is, they do not provide you with the information, there is a provision for penalties on them also. So this is what the obligation on public authority is all about. Understood? Now, are there certain exemptions in the Act? The answer is yes, because Section A of the Act exempts some kind of information to be provided under the aegis of RTI Act. First of all, the personal information of any person belonging to the government department which is unrelated to public interest or would cause an invasion of privacy, they should not be shared. So does that include personal information of assets of ministers? It does not, because these assets of ministers, they can be used or they can be created by the use of public money, and hence these ministers, they have to publish the details of their assets in public domain. Also, if any information affects the sovereignty and integrity of India, or it affects the commercial interest or trade secrets of any public authority, then also the information can be denied under the provision of RTI Act. Understood? So there are certain exemptions. However, on a broader scale, the public authorities, they are required to provide information to the requisite people. Also, the jurisdiction of this court, as far as the Act is concerned, the lower court, they do not have any jurisdiction. Understood? But when it comes to seeking the application under writ jurisdiction of Supreme Court and High Courts, where Supreme Court and High Court ensure that your fundamental rights are being taken care of, there the jurisdiction of High Courts and Supreme Court, especially their writ jurisdiction, is applicable on RTI Act. Understood? So this was all I could say about RTI Act. Now, to simplify or consolidate this provision or the article, let us now solve the practice question. Consider the following statements regarding Right to Information Act of the year 2005. Now, the RTI Act, it empowers citizens to seek information from private organization performing commercial function. Now, does RTI cover this? The answer is no, because it covers public organization who is performing a public function and not private organization. So, moving to the second statement, the Act mandates public authorities to publish information suo moto. Now, the meaning of suo moto is on their own. That is mandated by Section 4 of the RTI Act to reduce the need for citizens to file RTI application. This is a straightforward statement and hence correct. Moving to the third, political parties are explicitly included under the ambit of RTI Act. Now, I told you the definition of public authority which are required to provide information under RTI Act is quite interpreted widely by the Supreme Court. That although the RTI Act does not mention political parties explicitly, but the Supreme Court said that political parties are public authorities, hence they should be providing the information under RTI Act. So the statement says explicitly included, the answer then becomes incorrect. Had it said implicitly, then the question or the statement must have been correct. So third statement here is incorrect. Now, which of the statements given above is or are correct? Only second was correct. Therefore, option B here is your right answer. Now, moving to next article of the day, but before that, please make sure to register to this particular course which is available for free on our StudyIQ website, as this course will provide you not just the video, but it will also be providing you the interactive MCQs. It will provide you interactive MCQs. It will provide you an option to download this video so you can watch it later on even without the need for internet. You will get continuous updates for various courses, and also the PPTs and notes of this particular section will be available in which format? In PDF format. So make sure to use this particular link that I have provided here to go to a website and register for this course which is available free of cost. Understood? Now we move to another article which appeared on the last page of the Hindu newspaper. Now students who are reading the physical copy of the Hindu, they might not see this page. However, this page is available in the digital edition of the Hindu. And this newspaper last page almost invariably has an important article related to science. So people or students who do not have access to digital edition, please do not worry. I'll be covering each and every important article if it comes in the newspaper on this page. So need not worry. Now this article appeared today. It states that there is a chance that the polio disease, which prevalently was eradicated in most parts of the world, has been resurging in many parts of the world. So why is polio emerging? What kind of disease is polio? We will look into it in this discussion. Now, the context of this article states that WHO, it reportedly conducts surveillance of wastewater systems. Now, why does it surveil the wastewater system? Because you cannot go and ask people to give their blood samples quite frequently. People will be irritated, right? So, in order to gauge whether polio and any such disease is prevailing under the public domain, what WHO does is that it smartly analyzes not the blood of the person, but rather their waste through testing the wastewater system. And if it finds strains of a particular disease, then it alerts the local authorities. Now, while doing such exercise in European region, which includes Finland, Germany, Poland, Spain and UK, WHO was shocked by the findings. Why was it shocking? Because it reported that polio virus strains which were eradicated in this area have been discovered again. Now this brings our attention, how has polio re-emerged in these countries which are developed countries? Now let us understand. Before that, first of all, what is a polio disease? Now, it is a viral infectious disease in which the virus inhabits our intestines and it multiplies in the intestines, thereby creating a breakdown in the nervous system. Now, the transmission of this disease happens between person to person, mainly through their fecal oral route, that is through contaminated food, etc. Also, this disease affects primarily children who are under 5 years of age. Now, the symptoms of this disease is quite common. That is, people have headaches, fever, but these kind of symptoms are just usual symptoms. However, in rare cases, there are permanent losses of muscle function, as you can see, these poor children who are facing the brunt of polio disease. Now, also, the cure of this disease is not available. Rather, you can prevent this disease from happening to you through the process of immunization. Understood? Now, before understanding the process of immunization, let us understand the different strains which inhabit this polio disease. Now, there are 3 individual strains which are immunologically distinct. Now, you must remember COVID pandemic and there was strains called Alpha, Beta, Delta, Omicron, etc. Similarly, polio also has different kinds of strains which are categorized as wild polio virus type 1, type 2 and type 3. Now, the symptoms of these kind of strains are although similar, however, genetic wise and virological wise, they are quite different, and hence, in order to eradicate these different strains, you require differential approach and not a common approach. So, most of the vaccines that are provided for polio are catering either to one of these 3 strains. Now, coming back to what kind of vaccines are used to prevent polio, these are generally 2 types of vaccines. The most common one are oral polio vaccine. You must have heard Amitabh Bachchan's advertisement, Do Boond Zindagi Ke, which means 2 drops of life. And using this oral kind of vaccines, the children, they are immunized by healthcare professionals. Now, why do governments prefer oral vaccines? Because first of all, they are cheaper in nature. They are easy to administer. You need not train the healthcare professional quite intensively for this process. The children are also not afraid. Imagine if I go to a children with an injection, they'll naturally start crying, right? So I don't blame the children for that. Rather, this process is easy, it is cheap, and therefore the oral vaccine was preferred across the world. Now it is administered, as I already told you, in form of drops, and also it contains live but weakened form of strains which are original strains of the polio virus. Now, these polio virus strains, they are weakened using a chemical, and these strains are then used to generate an immune response inside your own body when you have or consume this oral polio vaccine virus. Now, there is a side effect of this virus also, or vaccine also, that in rare cases where vaccine derived polio virus from this weakened vaccine may cause polio virus inside you, and this is quite rare. That is 1 in 2.9 million cases there is a chance that you might be infected by such polio virus diseases, which is derived not from polio virus but from the vaccine itself. Now, to deal with such problems, there is also another vaccine called inactivated polio vaccine, which is administered in a form of injection to a muscle. Now, this is different from oral vaccine because it is made from killed polio virus and not weakened polio virus. So the chances of vaccine derived polio virus from this inactivated vaccine is not possible. Also, it caters to all three types of polio viruses, hence it is although more expensive but more desirable also. Understood? So this is what two kinds of polio virus vaccines that exist currently. Now, let us solve another practice question with reference to polio virus or poliomyelitis. Consider the following statements. Polio virus is a viral disease transmitted through respiratory route and direct human contact. Now, this is incorrect because it is transmitted through what? Oral, fecal route and not respiratory route. So, first statement is correct. World was declared polio free by the World Health Organization in 2014 after sustained immunization efforts. This statement also is incorrect because going back to the strains I have told you earlier, now these kind of strains were eradicated. That means the world was made rid of these strains. However, this first type of strain, it is still prevalent in countries like Pakistan, in countries like Afghanistan. So the world is not free from polio virus. Rather, it is free from two strains, not the third strain. Understood? So, second statement also is incorrect. First was incorrect. Therefore, we have to identify correct options. Hence, D is the right answer. Understood? Now, moving on to the next article. Should assisted dying be legalized? Now, this article appeared in today's newspaper because back in November, the House of Commons, which is the popular house of the United Kingdom's Parliament, this Parliament passed a bill which legalized the part of assisted dying. Now, the provisions of this bill, which was introduced in United Kingdom, is not important from India, but what is important is the concept of assisted dying. Understood? So, as I already told you, this vote by a majority with which the method of legalizing of assisted dying took place, it has seismic social shift in a market or in any country because of the polarizing issue that this is, that many people, they think it is a dignified way to end your own life, to prevent suffering to a human being. Rather, on the other hand, there are conservationists, especially people who are closer to their religion. They feel that the life provided to an individual is a gift of God and not something that the individual has their own right of. So, if the God can give you life, it is only the God who can take away your life, and you cannot take away that life because it is a sin. So, these kind of two arguments that favor and go against the part or the process of assisted dying. Now, what is important from this exam's perspective is not the debate on the issue, but the process and regulation of assisted dying, particularly in that of India. Now, assisted dying, as the name says, is a process of ending your own life, but not on your own, but with active assistance of healthcare professionals, especially the doctors. Now, why is this issue contentious? First of all, as I told you, there are section of people who says that assisted dying, it ends the suffering of an individual who might be suffering from a terminal disease, who might not have the locomotive ability to do their work, and that is why it gives them a easy way and a more humane and dignified way to end their own life. Also, it prevents people dying by suicide, because we have seen many people who are terminally ill, who cannot take care of themselves, who do not have the financial means to get treated, they end their life through a process of suicide. Rather, if they had their option of assisted dying, they would have rather opted that. So, to prevent deaths by suicide and to enable human to end their own life in a more respectable way are the demands why people demand such a process of assisted dying. But also there are people who say that it is prone to misuse, because most of the assisted dying will happen only people who are elderly or people who are existing or living with disabilities, because according to Indian society or any society for that matter, these people are dependents and it leads to severe financial and emotional burden on their loved ones and caretaker ones. So in case you provide assisted dying to these people, there are chances that their relatives might misuse this provision and force these people to end their own life so as to end their and their respectable loved ones' suffering. So there are two sides of an argument. First, that favors assisted dying, and other that goes against the process of assisted dying. Now, coming back to India, now literally there are two types in which you can die. First is called passive euthanasia or passive assisted dying, and another one is called active assisted dying. Now in passive assisted dying, there are people who are living just by the virtue of life support system. So in those people, if you withdraw the life support system, there is a chance that that person might die. And that process of withdrawing the life support system is called passive assisted dying, or commonly called as passive euthanasia. Understood? So, in passive euthanasia, a person is living with the help of life assisting or life support devices, and if you stop giving that life support devices to the person, they end up dead. And also, there is other active euthanasia, which means that a person who is suffering from any terminal disease but is not dying immediately. So, as to fasten their process of death, also as to enable them to become dead, we administer a certain kind of lethal injections or lethal dosage of medicines which ends their life. So this is what active euthanasia is about. So these are two aspects of assisted dying. One is passive euthanasia, where you withdraw life support system and it leads to death. And the other one is active euthanasia, where you administer a lethal drug or medicine which ends the life of the patient. Now coming back to India, Supreme Court in Aruna Shanbag case, where a nurse who was a victim of rape and was lying in a vegetative state, she appealed in the Supreme Court so as to enable her to withdraw life support system and then become dead, and Supreme Court recognized the legality of passive euthanasia in the country, because according to Supreme Court, right to die with dignity is a part of right to life under Article 21, because Supreme Court says that right to life does not just mere existence, but right to life provides you with the opportunity to enjoy every faculties of life, be it talking to your friends, be it eating the favorite food you want, be it visiting the favorite wedding destination or favorite tourist destination. All of this you can enjoy only when you live life at the fullest. And according to Supreme Court, it also includes right to die with dignity and preserve your dignity even in the last moments of your life. And according to this, it recognized the legality of passive euthanasia. That is, if a patient is lying in a vegetative state and is live only because of life support system, so in that case, that person can approach the court and give requisite consent and approvals, and after that, that person will be allowed to undertake passive euthanasia. Whereas coming to active euthanasia, it is prohibited in India by Supreme Court. Therefore, Supreme Court of India only recognizes and legalizes the process of passive euthanasia. However, it comes under severe criticism and under severe due process that you have to follow in case if you want to opt for passive euthanasia. Understood? Now moving to the practice question. Consider the following statements regarding active and passive euthanasia. Passive euthanasia involves deliberately taking measures to end person's life, whereas active euthanasia involves withholding or withdrawing medical treatments necessary to sustain life. Now, this is actually, you can understand from this, is actually opposite. it should have been active here and it should have been passive here. Understood? Because the statement I have formed is interchanged, hence first statement here is incorrect. Passive euthanasia is legally allowed in India under strict conditions, but active euthanasia is prohibited. As I've already told you, Supreme Court allowed for passive euthanasia and it started from Aruna Schonbach case. Hence, second statement here is correct. Now, we have to identify correct statements. Therefore, option B is the right answer because only second statement was correct. Now, moving to next article of the day, but before that, please make sure to subscribe to our course of foundation course which we are offering, as this provides you static knowledge, basic mentorship support, test series, etc. And all of this is available at a very pocket friendly pricing. But to sweeten the deal, let me tell you, you can use my code which is ATS Live, as this code will enable you to get maximum discounts on the channel that we provide. Now the code for your convenience will be displayed on your screens below, that is ATS Live, as you can use this code to gain maximum discount on the courses or all the courses which are provided by StudyIQ. Understood? Now let us move to another article which appeared yesterday but I missed out on because of timing constraint, but thankfully it appeared today again in the Indian Express newspaper, that is on explained page in page 18. Now this article states that Prime Minister yesterday or 2 days before, he laid a foundation stone for a project under Ken-Betwa river linking project. Now what is such river linking project? Because earlier the government of India came up with a proposal for transferring water from one river basin to another river basin. Now this kind of water transport or transfer from one basin to another is a mega infrastructural project, which means the national water development agencies regarding this very proposal by the government has identified 30 links. The 16 links is for peninsular rivers, whereas 14 links is for Himalayan component, and Ken and Betwa link project is under the peninsular component. Now Ken and Betwa river link is also the first river linking project in the country, and the benefits of such projects are that it provides the farms with irrigation water through canals. As you understand, 55% of our lands are irrigated by rainwater and not by artificial water. So in order to increase the levels of irrigation in India's industrial sector and agricultural sector, we need to build such canals. Also, when water is flowing through such canals, it enables the government to generate power through hydroelectric power, and also you can tackle droughts and floods by transferring merely waters from one basin to the other. In case there is a flood in one river basin, you can transfer excess water in another river basin, thereby doing away with the conditions of flood. And when there is a drought, you can transfer water from elsewhere into that particular area so as to do away with the problem of drought. So these are the benefits that are originally intended by such national level river linking project. And as you can see, the Ken and Betwa river link is the first such river linking project. Now, there are other projects also. I have provided a list and the maps here. You can look into it after the session ends, as I will provide you with the notes. And then let us now understand what is this Ken-Betwa link project. Now, it is a series of canals which is 221 kilometers long, which is intended to transfer water from where? From Ken River to Betwa River. Now, this is important. The name states not Betwa Ken, but Ken-Betwa. So the water is being transferred from Ken to Betwa River, which both of which are tributaries of Yamuna. Now the expected project is able to provide annual irrigation to as much as 10.62 lakh hectares of land, and this land will be in Madhya Pradesh and Uttar Pradesh. It will also supply drinking water to as many 62 lakh people in the region, and it will also enable the government to generate hydroelectricity as well as solar electricity through laying down of solar cells in the Ken or the canal area. Understood? So the benefits of this project is not just irrigation support and power generation, but also the supply of drinking water, which you can understand is very essential in the area where Ken and Betwa flows, because it flows in which region of India? in the region of Bundelkhand, which is almost news in every year because of the region or of the reasons of frequent droughts. Now this Bundelkhand region is where the Ken and Betwa link will follow, and the water will be supplied from Ken to Betwa river. Now moving to another project, the budget of this project is close to 45,000 crore, and this has already been declared by the government as a national project, which means the majority of the funds for this particular project will be given not by state governments but by which government? By union government. Now this project will be executed in 2 phases, and the Prime Minister 2 days before inaugurated the construction of Dodhan Dam, which will have or which is included in the first phase of the project. Understood? Now let us understand the regions which will be benefiting from this project, and as I already told you, this will benefit the region of Bundelkhand, which has as much as 13 districts in the region, including Panna, Tikamgarh, Chhatarpur, Sagar, Damoh, which are located in Madhya Pradesh, as well as 4 districts which are located in Uttar Pradesh. So the area is Bundelkhand, which is known for its rugged terrain, areas which were inhabited by erstwhile dacoits, as there is less presence of state in the region, and hence to provide this region with frequent supply of drinking water, irrigation support, you require such mega projects, and Ken and Betwa river linking project is one such project. Now there are criticisms of this project also. First is that by undertaking the construction for this canal project, what the government will do is that it will take large-scale deforestation inside the Panna National Park and Panna Tiger Reserve, because the canal will be flowing right through Panna Tiger Reserve. Now, why is it being protested by the conservationists? Is because tiger became locally extinct in the Panna Tiger Reserve. However, it also witnessed successful reintroduction of the tiger, and hence the scientists and the local people, they are worried that such projects might lead to deforestation, which will also put the tigers in danger, and also it will affect the population of ghadial who are located in Ken Ghadial Sanctuary, along with vultures nesting sites which are existing in the area. Now in terms of displacement to people, this project will displace as many as 5,000 families in Chhatarpur districts of MP and 1,400 families in Panna district of MP. Also, moving large quantities of water from one river basin to another can have impact on land and atmosphere in play and feedback mechanism, which is essential for rainfall. And we have witnessed construction of such projects in longer time can lead to rainfall deficit in the peak rainfall season, thereby reducing the amount of rainfall. So these are the challenges that have been highlighted, and based on these challenges, there are people who are protesting such mega projects. Understood? Now moving to another article which is related to a fact that bank loans have reduced to 13-year low in our country. Now this is a very good news, as India historically felt the brunt of non-performing assets in its bank, and this reduced the ability of banks to extend loans to its regular consumers. So let us understand what is first of all an NPA. The context of this article, as I already told you, that non-performing assets have declined to lowest in as many as 13 years to just 2.5%. Now the consolidated bank balance sheets of commercial banks have remained robust because of this, and it has implications on Indian economy. So first of all, let us understand what are the non-performing assets. Now any loan which is unable to be paid back by its borrowers, it is categorized as a non-performing asset. Now, if the loan or the interest is not paid for more than 90 days, then only it is categorized as an NPA. Now, historically, there were reasons for Indian banks to give loans quite easily, and that resulted into increase in non-performing assets. For example, at the time in 2008, when the growth levels of Indian economy was quite high, it made banks overly optimistic, and as a result, they started extending loans from everyone, for people starting airline businesses to people starting doing diamond businesses. All of these were provided loans, and as a result, what we saw that the kind of loans, they become a non-performing asset. Also, India witnessed slow growth post global financial crisis, and it led to reduction in investment in an economy. That were external factors, and also regulatory and policy risks which were undertaken by the government, which made companies in telecom sector, coal sector quite independent and loss of their ability to repay loans, and that is why we witnessed increase in NPA. Now NPA creates a vicious cycle which you can understand. If a bank witnesses rising NPA, it leads to lower credit creation in the market, which leads in a way to lower demand and employment generation, because companies, as you can understand, what they do is that they use this loan and undertake developments of their new projects, which creates jobs and employment generation, and if that development doesn't happen, it does not lead to creation of jobs. Now if that thing happens with each and every company in the country, it will lead to economic slowdown and thereby also affect the ability of the existing companies to repay their loan backs. And therefore, when companies are unable to repay their loan backs, it will further lead to increase in NPA levels. So this is what the problem of NPA is all about, that once NPA starts increasing, it further leads to increase in NPA through this is vicious cycle. So government, RBI both got together and decided on many policies to reduce NPA, such that banks were ordered to conduct their asset review. They were given restrictions under prompt corrective action framework. If they do not recover their loans, they will be subjected to certain restrictions. Government brought insolvency and bankruptcy code, which unlocked the locked funds in the companies. So these were the measures that were taken by the government. Now, moving on to the last article of the day, it is a summary of important health related developments that happened in 2024. There are two important developments that happened. First is a new class of drugs which are used as a weight loss drugs. Now these drugs, that are semaglutide and tribazazide, they are primarily anti-diabetic drugs. However, they are also used by people if they want to reduce weight. Now such are called GLPs-1, that is GLP-1 receptor agnostic drugs, and there are certain side effects which you can look at here. Now the second development was the use of CAR T cell therapy, which is chimeric antigen receptor T cell therapy. Now in this kind of therapy, what we use is we activate the patient's immune system so that it can fight the disease on its own. For example, from this graph you can see the healthcare professionals, they withdraw the T cells from a patient, and that T cells are genetically altered in the laboratory by giving them chimeric antigen receptors. Now these CAR, they are multiplied in the laboratory, and these CARs are then inserted into the bloodstream of the patient, thereby activating their immune system response to any external diseases such as cancer. Now such treatments have been proved more effective for blood cancers such as leukemia and lymphoma, and thereby they are used quite widely. Now there are benefits, that is, person who are undertaking such kind of treatment are witnessing either high or complete remission, that is complete recovery from the disease, and this is a tailored medicine, hence the side effects can be quite low. Whereas it can also lead to cytokine release, which increases the immune system response and destroys even the healthier cells, and these can be quite expensive in nature. Understood? So these are the chimeric anti-cell treatment. Now let us consider the practice question, or the final practice question for the day. Consider the following statement regarding CAR T cell therapy. It involves genetically modifying patient's T cell to target specific cancer cells. It is correct. This therapy is effective only for treating solid tumors like breast cancer. Incorrect. It is more effective for treating which cancer? Blood cancers. So second statement is correct, first was correct, therefore option A is the right answer to your practice question. Now we move to our today's conclusion. You can watch or download the notes which I will provide you in this Telegram channel. So until then, I bid you a very good bye.